So I'm going to do this topic today, which I really want to talk about, and actually ADHD is a great pathway into that. So I want to do some easy to use techniques for making better decisions in business. And this is because, as I've mentioned, I have ADHD. I actually struggle to make decisions. It's one of the challenges of ADHD. So I love so many resources that you can use about this that will make your life easier. So I'm going to get into them in a moment, but I just wanted to just say, I think it's really exciting that our government are starting to think about these topics. Okay, so easy to use techniques for making better decisions in business. So some of the reading that I would recommend in this case is Decision Making in the Age of Urgency. It's a great paper by McKinsey and Company. That's from 2019. Untangling Your Organization's Decision Making, which is also McKinsey and Company 2017. And there's another one I'm going to mention in a minute. So I like to share those resources and reading lists because for some people who are maybe doing an ADHD or learning about business, you might want to go and explore those papers in a bit more detail. So you can go and look those up on the McKinsey and Company site and you'll get free resources, and you can actually download the white papers, which are a little bit more detailed. They'll give you lots of stats and facts. What I like about McKinsey and their papers is they're quite easy to read and they're digestible. So I feel that it's a great way to keep on top of the latest trends around a particular topic. And I think this is really important for people who are maybe not necessarily studying, but who are wanting to be better in their organizations, who want to be better leaders. These are great tools because they talk about the trends in work, the future of work, and it's really helpful. There's a lot of great research around consumer trends also, so do check them out. So in the paper Untangling Your Organization's Decision Making by McKinsey and Company, they talked how any organization can improve the speed and quality of its decisions by paying more attention to what it's deciding. I just want to read that back again because I felt really struck when I read this. So any organization can improve the speed and quality of its decisions by paying more attention to what it's deciding. So I would love to ask you, especially for anyone commenting and joining us here live today, how effective are your organization's decisions? And how effective are your organization's decision making? Do they have ways that the team or the staff can contribute their ideas? Are there sometimes too many people on a board? Are there too many emails? Do you switch off because you've heard the same presentation 100 times? How effective are your organization's decisions? So what this quote to me says, and you may have a different view, and if you do, please put it in the comments because I'd love to hear. But what it might be saying is that actually we're spending so much time making decisions or talking about the decisions, but we're not actually deciding anything. And so that can be wasting time in our organizations. So if we think of lean management theory, one of the most important things is to cut the things that are wasting time. So it's really important to consider what we're actually investing our time in and what things need to be decided. And we've got some, great feedback here about people talking about different things. I think Paul King's right. So, a fellow entrepreneur runs his own business, likes to make decisions quickly before having 100% of the facts. There's power in making a clear decision, which is actually very true because it brings me on to a topic I'm going to talk about shortly. But in the Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman, he talks about decisions. And one of the things he says is you will never have all of the information. You may have some of it, you may have part of it, but actually that waiting for a perfect time to know everything is going to be very difficult. This is why I think you always need people who are different to you and who have different viewpoints, because then together you can make a decision that's more rounded. So that can be really helpful. So what problems are our leaders facing? So when I was looking at my research for this, I looked at McKinsey reports, I looked at various articles from Entrepreneur, from Forbes, from Harvard Business Review, the New York Times, all kinds of different resources. And they all seem to bring up the same issues. So our leaders are struggling with too much data. This can also be called data paralysis, where there's just so much data, you don't know what to do. A lot of leaders are struggling with the same version or another version of the same change management strategy being implemented that maybe was already attempted 5 years ago, but it didn't quite meet its execution. Some of our leaders are struggling with confirmation bias and worry about that. What if we only decide on things that are in our values or what we agree with, but actually we fall short or we lose sight of things that could actually be really helpful for our organization? Cancel culture is a huge concern for many leaders. They worry that decisions they would have made years ago might fall, might cause them a PR scandal. So they worry about the crisis communications and the time that might be involved in fixing things. Too many meetings is another thing that our leaders are facing. They're in meetings all day, every day, trying to solve things or make decisions, but actually sometimes what we find is some of our senior leaders are in meetings that should be middle management, and sometimes our middle management need more leaders or need a key stakeholder, what we call it in lots of organizations as a project sponsor who can actually make the decision on something. Many of our leaders are struggling to motivate their staff in challenging times. We've had a global pandemic. We're going through a war with Ukraine at the moment. We know that there are fuel shortages. We know that the cost of living crisis is happening. Our staff are worried. There's a lot of things to think about. So as well as all of the things going on in their landscape, they also need to think, well, how will this affect my staff? And also, leaders worry about making the wrong decision. So that creates a lot of anxiety. It can mean that stress can be a real problem in work. People might not be sleeping. They might not be looking after themselves. Too many emails is another real issue in organizations. So this is why when you see many people looking for the next greatest productivity hack, they'll look at things and they'll think, wow, if I get ClickUp, then everything will be better for my organization. If I move to Asana, if I try Trello, if I get, Jira, all of the different tools, if I send my team on this management course or this project management tool as training, because we all want an answer. And some of those tools are really helpful because they remove a lot of that anxiety and they have clearer transparency for people. What I found really interesting in the case for behavioral strategy by McKinsey was that 72% of senior executive respondents who responded to the survey shared that bad decisions were actually the norm in their organizations. Now, I have to be curious about that statement because who filled in the survey? Do we have a challenge with data where sometimes people who are very angry or feel frustrated about a particular topic might be more likely to respond to a survey so they have the opportunity to air their grievances or their opinions on a matter? I don't know, but I thought it was a really interesting stat. So if 72% of senior executive respondents, we're looking at the C-suite, the corporate level executives, your highest positions in an organization, believe that bad decisions are the norm in their organizations, what are they doing about it? And why is that not being tackled? That's really concerning to me, that in our leadership teams, in our organizational culture, we're not dealing with this. So if you are studying an MBA or studying business, or you're just generally interested in this, I highly encourage you to go and read The Case for Behavioral Strategy because it goes through so much detail around organizational culture and leadership and things that we can do to tackle some of these issues. I can see some of the comments coming in and I always try to respond if I can while people are live. So problem statements are great to identify what you really need or want to do. Thanks, Jess. You're so right. That's really true. And I think sometimes working out what is the problem and what do we want to decide on can be tricky. Tony said, some leaders worry about managing innovation and having a dynamic workforce. And I think this is the thing, we worry so much with innovation as well, that our competitor might find something out, or, you know, we limit ourselves so much. But sometimes actually that open innovation can help people to work so much faster, and it can give people the confidence to try things and have mistakes and improve. And some really interesting feedback about some experiences of working in places where people might have meetings so they don't have to make a decision themselves. So they might meet to talk about something in case that bad decision, or they make a bad decision, could affect their reputation. You see this a lot actually when we spoke about too many emails. We have so many instances where people will copy someone into an email to make sure they protect themselves, they cover their back for audit trail. And that's very important actually. I think we shouldn't lose sight that in many organizations we need governance, we do need audit trail, we do need processes. But what's really important, and you'll find out in a minute, is actually we need to limit our decisions in some ways so that we can spend time making the right decisions and reduce any of the unnecessary noise. So I'll go through what I mean in a moment. So back to Josh Kaufman in the Personal MBA, he talks about a decision is the act of committing to a specific plan of action. And he says that actually, if you're not cutting off viable options, you're not making a decision. Now, I found that quite profound because the word decision is from the Latin cut off. So if it means to cut off, you are cutting off your options. So in effect, to not make a decision is a decision in itself, which is really interesting. So I think it's really important that we think about when we're making decisions, how we address those decisions, how we will never have all of the information we need, but also something that Josh says, which I found interesting, is how you can say, well, what experience do I want? What outcome do I want? And then tailor your decision around that. So that's really cool. So I've spoken a little bit about organizations, and I feel that because I'm no longer working in an organization and I felt frustrated in an organization about decisions, that maybe it's not best for me to give tips on how to do better decisions in an organization. But if you have tips for us, please put them in the comments. But because I have my own business, I thought it would be better for me to come with some thoughts around how to make decisions in your own business. So that one of the first things is to reduce decision fatigue by habits. So when we look at decisions, there are different decisions you might need to make every day. It could be something like when you get out of bed, do you get immediately into the shower or do you play on your phone for a while? So if you can reduce decision fatigue, and this is particularly important for people who may be neurodiverse, so that's why I'm sharing my own journey. If you can reduce any steps that are unnecessary, so that could be by doing things, the same consistent repeated tasks every single day, for instance, deciding that you will have a banana every day or a particular breakfast. If you can reduce your decisions, you can save all of your energy for the decisions that you need to make that are really important, that could be more focused around strategic things. So by building habits step by step, it becomes a lot easier for people. I also like the idea of looking at the situation from the outside in. So if you've watched my content before, you'll know that I'm a fan of NLP. I'm an NLP master trainer. So that's neuro-linguistic programming, if you haven't heard of that before. One of the things we do in NLP is we actually sometimes put people in different chairs, and you might sit in a chair and say the problem and then move to another chair and say it from a different person's opinion. And so what happens is when you look at a situation from outside in, or as Jess said earlier, with your problem, you look at the problem and you think, well, what is the problem statement and how do I want to fix this? This can really help people to get really clear on what the issue is and how to make the decision. I see some great comments, especially one that's made me giggle, about Zuckerberg, you know, the chief of Meta and his empire, and Facebook and Instagram and everything else he's acquired now. But Mark Zuckerberg wears the same clothes every day. Steve Jobs did the same. If you reduce your decisions, it just speeds up your time. it is important to have options and flexibility and versatility. I know, for instance, I am ADHD, so I love to have different options. I actually feel frustrated if I have too much rigid stuff around me, but at the same time I thrive when I have a routine. I thrive when I'm in an organization and there's rules and there's things to follow. So it's about what's right for you, but looking at the situation from the outside in can really help. The same thing can be helpful if you describe the issue or the decision, the problem out loud to yourself or a friend. So for those people who were chatting in the comments and the chats about, you know, sometimes there's a lot of meetings and maybe it's to cover people's back or to protect them. I think sometimes there's a lot of meetings because people are able to verbalize their thoughts, and something special happens in a meeting room where you can share ideas and sometimes you can come out with a better solution. On the other hand, sometimes we can have meetings for meeting's sake. I also love a great tool called the thinking hats, and that's something I would recommend you looking into. And there's different types of personalities or different types of ways of being in a meeting that you could actually delegate to a client, or is it 7? Did I say 8? 7 hats. So check out the thinking hats. What you need to do is look at that and see there's different ways you can be in a meeting, but if you said to someone, I want you to be the black hat in this meeting today, they would need to come up with ways to be negative about your idea. But actually, it can mean that all of the things that could possibly go wrong with your idea can be put out in the open and you can discuss them with everyone, and that can be really, really powerful. It's a great tool, so do check it out. The other thing is, for me, when I'm making decisions, is sometimes I feel emotional. I am a female. I know that that we have different leadership styles, and there's lots of research around this with you know, the ways that females lead and the way that men lead, masculine leadership and feminine leadership. So I'm very collaborative naturally. I love to have meetings. I love to talk about things, but I also value my time in being able to do work rather than feeling restricted. So sometimes as well, I know that people can get emotional, myself included. And I think if you are feeling emotional about a decision, sleep on it. It's really important to just take some rest. But I do encourage you to think about what Josh Kaufman said in his book, that actually the art of decision making is when we don't make a decision, that's a decision in itself. So I think that's really valuable.